Hello, we are live. This is Colleen, the Preparedness Pro, and I'm getting Instagram on board here. Let's maybe, you know me, I just all thumbs when it comes to Instagram. Sorry, Instagram folks. Something about pushing a button. Half the time I forget to do it, and I'm sorry about that. I'll just have to create some short reels for you and post those instead. Okay, so today I have been on the phone with some clients of mine, some Preparedness Pro consulting clients, and I have asked them permission. I'm not going to mention their names, but I also didn't want them to feel bad if I was mentioning their situation and as a what not to do. And all of them just laughed at me and they're like, yes, of course you can mention what not to do. But like I said, I'm not mentioning their names. So what we're going to do today is we're going to learn 7 things of what not to do thanks to my clients. And I'm just tickled pink that they were all on board. They were all willing to take one for the cause. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to basically essentially talk about miscellaneous tips for preparedness that you don't typically hear a lot of. Or maybe you hear it in a different way, and I've got just a different spin on it that I'd like to share with you today, if that's all right. So that's what we're up against today, and I hope that you like it. But since it is a miscellaneous day, feel free to ask any question that you have about preparedness. In order to ask that question, all you have to do is put a comment in the Facebook underneath the video, or in the YouTube comments underneath the video. You can do that and it will show up on my screen, and hopefully I will see it. The beakers, I hopefully can see it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with number 1. Number 1 is going to take a little bit of explanation, but number 1 is don't think like everyone else. So what do I mean by that? Well, I've had 2 instances. For example, I had one client who was heavily invested in ammo, and nothing wrong with that. But he was so heavily invested in ammo that he was defunct in so many of the other principles of preparedness, in terms of tangible items. And his rationale, and he's a very intelligent person, very well thought out. Instead of investing in coins and having cash set aside and things of that nature, his thought process was that he would use the ammo as bartering. And that with all his ammo, and he had various sizes, he was thinking about, what's the most common ammo out there that's going to be used. So he had plenty of that. And no, I'm not telling you who he is. Somebody just asked, who is he? I want him. No, he's not bartering yet. Okay. Anyway, so he was planning on bartering for what he needed. Now, there's a couple bugaboos with this, and we talked about this. First of all, what if everybody else is thinking like him? Who would have anything else to barter with? You can't eat ammo. Second, he's assuming that he might have the time and the wherewithal to barter. And that may not be the case until things settle down. Bartering typically doesn't happen until things settle down. So keep that in mind. Things usually go crazy first. People are in survival mode and they get acclimated with what's going on around them in their disaster. And then and only then do they go, okay, what are my assets? What do I need? And what can I barter with? That's how it usually happens. So your first few months, even, you're trying to make do on your own. Some people can't go that far, but let's at least say a first couple of weeks. So what was he supposed to do the first couple of weeks if his big plan was to barter with ammo? So food for thought. Get it? Food for thought. I'm funny, aren't I? Huh? Yeah. Okay. Don't applaud. It's all right. Anyway, so there's also some rationale that I suggested to him that he may want to think about, and a lot of people might want to. I'm not sure how I feel about, well, I am sure how I feel about it. I don't know why I said it that way. I don't want to barter ammo. It can be used against me. And I'm not playing the USA game where I'm okay with spending money, sending weapons to enemy countries, and then just having them use it on my enemies or my friends, my allies, or myself. So that's how I feel about it. So ammo's probably not the one that you want to barter with anyway. I can see a time or a scenario in which ammo is currency. So you may want to do that if that's something that you have the luxury of. But considering how expensive ammo is now, I think that time has come and gone. Where someone has that opportunity to truly invest in ammo and having that be your barter tool. So that was one example. Another example is someone thinking, this person is actually really, really kind. But they were thinking that, and I've seen a meme that says this. So it's not a joke though. This person genuinely thought that what they were going to do was they were going to, when things really went south, they have an Amazon warehouse near them. And so we got to talking about this. And just so you know, when I'm talking to my clients, I'm not like, you know what, that's a stupid idea, and whack them up the side of the head. Usually they're virtual, so I can't whack them up the side of the head anyway. But we talk about things. I ask questions and say, okay, well, how do you think other people are thinking about this? What do you think other people's plans are? And that gets them thinking. So I suggest to you, this is free. Here, you get it for free. What do you think other what other people's plans are? What do you think other people are thinking? It's a really good way to poke holes in your own plans sometimes. Especially with that whole don't think like other people. You want to be strategic. You want to think several moves ahead of other people's plans with preparedness. If we all thought the same, then we're going to be in a world of hurt. We need to be functional and independent within our own households. You can't prepare for everything. That's what you barter for, is what you couldn't be prepared for, what you couldn't anticipate, what you couldn't afford, what you are incapable of doing for yourself. That's what you want the bartering to be for. Not something that you certainly could have taken care of on your own. Okay. Another instance was someone, oh, bless his heart. Like I said, he's actually really kind, but he was planning on not looting per se, but he said, you know, if this certain scenario happens, and I won't talk about what it is, but he says, if this certain scenario happens, you know, there's going to be a lot of dead people and there'll be a lot of assets that I can go and have access to. Well, the problem with that sentence is he was thinking about himself and his family. I'm not saying that he wasn't thinking about his family, but he was thinking that as if he'd be the only one with a brilliant idea. And that's just not the case. Chances are he didn't have the stomach for running into other people who would be doing the same thing. So we talked about the mental fortitude that was necessary for him to have, even to carry out that plan. That was probably not the best plan for his personality, because like I said, he's just a really, really nice guy. Not even sure how he even came up with that concept, that idea. Maybe he watched a good movie. I don't know. But it's important that you think about the ripple effect, well, this might happen, and then this might happen, and then this might happen, and this might happen. I'm not talking about the negative kind of stuff. I'm thinking about if you move this way, then what would be a counter move of the crises or of other people. And it's not about them trying to hurt you. It's just about them trying to survive as well. So other people may have the same idea. This is another point. I had another client who lived near a city pool, and his idea was to abdicate all of his water preparedness because of this city pool that he lived near. It wasn't in a community of over 1,000 people. How many other people did he think had that same idea? They were all going to abdicate their water preparedness, and they didn't even think water preparedness. He was probably 1% of people who actually even thought water preparedness. Besides pool water, not a good idea anyway, especially if there's a chemical issue, a chemical fallout issue or something of that nature. That's not a good idea anyway, because then it'll be tainted. You want your water source to be underground, ideally. if you can get it that way. But my point is that he didn't realize that he wasn't the only one thinking that way, and that he would then be at competition. So the last thing you want to do is be where other people are in the first couple of weeks of a crisis. You want to be where you can be secure and safe, and not really have to rub elbows and fight for assets. In fact, I was talking to a girlfriend who went to Costco during the TP crisis of the port, the port strike. And she was oblivious to the port strike. She had no idea that it was even going on. And she had 2 cases of TP in her cart. And this mean, angry man came up to her and said, "Where did you get that TP?" And she was like, "Huh? It's just back there." And he says, "You got it back there?" And she said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh," and he just grumbled and went off. And she's like, I felt like he was going to hit me or something. And she's like, "Now I understand," because I told her about the port strike and people freaking out about the TP. You just, I mean, that wasn't even life and death. That was not even anything that people needed to freak out about yet. So people shouldn't freak out anyway. That doesn't help anybody. But anyway, so point number 1, don't think like everybody else. Try to think about how other people are planning on solving their problem. Try to think like the masses are going to think, and then have an alternative plan. That's point number 1. So hopefully that'll teach you something. Focus on, I had a client that was focusing on food, thinking that they would barter with the food. Well, I said, what if everybody else is focusing on food? How are you going to have warm clothes? How are you going to be able to protect yourself? So again, you need to be your own self-sufficient world as best as you can. This person was certainly capable of being that. They just, as it turned out, when we talked more, they just took greater peace in seeing their cupboards full and their shelves full of food. So once we talked about some of the other components of preparedness and understood the ramifications of having, alternative pairs of shoes and belts and good pairs of jeans and shirts and things of that nature, they realized that they could take peace in seeing those kind of items as well. And so we were able to help them. All right, so moving on, next one. Financial preparedness, it's actually a thing. So let's talk about that. I am astounded sometimes at hearing people have so much stuff, but barely have 2 pennies to rub together, but they've got plenty of stuff. Do you realize that so many people during Milton did not evacuate, not because they were stubborn, but because they could not afford to? They didn't have the financial wherewithal. You know, those credit cards that you say are for an emergency? Milton would have been an emergency. Getting your cell phone upgraded when it was still perfectly fine, that's not an emergency. Let's redefine what an emergency is. Milton, yep, that's an emergency. I give you permission to use your credit card for that. But good gravy. You really need to strive and self-discipline to have 6 months of operating expenses for your household on reserve. That's part of your preparedness. That's part of what you need. And that's important. If you don't have that, then you're not properly prepared yet. It's principle number 9, but it still is important. You can't have tons of stuff and not have the financial means of evacuating when you need to, for example. That's just an example. I had a client who was very rich in things, but just very poor in financial wherewithal. And they were just one bad luck away from being obliterated, and they would have had to lose their house. They were renting. So we talked about some strategies that they needed to do to put themselves in a better financial position. And I said, stop buying stuff. Stop. Just start putting that money aside and start building up your 6-month nest egg. That should be your minimum nest egg that you want. I would suggest that people pay their utilities ahead. And yes, you can do that. They don't mind having a credit there. Pay your utilities ahead if you can. Pay your mortgage payments ahead if you can. You can label them and pay them separate, and you label them, this is March 2024 payment. This is April 2024 payment. It will not go towards the principal. It will go towards the actual payment. You're allowed to do that. Same goes for car payments and things of that nature. If you don't feel like you can keep it in savings, then fine, pay it ahead. But by all means, have 6 months of operating expenses taken care of in your household. It's invaluable. And think about all the people who really, really stressed out during COVID when they couldn't work. If they had 6 months operating expenses, things would have been a little bit different for them. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else on finances that I wanted to cover. Small bills. If you're going to conserve some cash, small bills are important, and not 20s, 10s, 5s, and 1s. Okay. Not 20s, 10s, 5s, and 1s. You want to hear one of the biggest sellers right now at Costco? Gold bars. And now they're selling platinum too. Go figure. I know you're like, you see these commercials on Newsmax and Fox News for gold bars and gold and for retirement funds, but who knew that Costco is nearly one of the biggest sellers of gold bars right now? Isn't that crazy? Now that's a warehouse you want to find. I'm just kidding. Okay, so that's good for that one. Now let's go to the number 3. Number 3 is no man is an island. You need friends. You've got to have friends. This whole lone survivalist is not realistic. Even your family, just by itself, that's not realistic. I don't care if you have 3 teenage boys. You just cannot operate alone. Form an organization. I'm not even talking about y'all moving in together and functioning through a crisis. I'm talking about being able to talk to other people about preparedness and learning from other people about preparedness and filling in the gaps. In my opinion, you should have a preparedness group that you meet with on a monthly basis, that you can trust, that you teach the 10 principles of preparedness. Go to my blog. There's the 10 principles of preparedness. Each month, talk about a new principle of preparedness and dissect it and apply it to your lives, and let that be your topic for each month, and just keep renewing it. Believe me, you'll have plenty to talk about. I know preppers. You'll have plenty. But you should be meeting with a group of like-minded individuals on a regular basis so that preparedness is not at the back of your mind. Preparedness is something that is a lifestyle for you. It's something that you're actually focused on and want to be a part of your life. You want to be self-sufficient. It doesn't happen by accident. I spent some time today calling some friends that I felt that I needed to talk to about preparedness and see how they were doing. And one of my girlfriends said, "Yeah, we can do that, but it won't be until such and such a time." And I'm like, there's never a good time to talk about preparedness now. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little antsy with the elections. And I think that no matter what happens with the elections, things are going to get a little interesting. So I feel a sense of, I won't say urgency. I feel a sense that I need to be deliberate in my preparedness efforts, and have things ship-shape before the elections take place, certainly before the power changes hands in January. So putting it off is definitely not something I would create. Your preparedness group now. It will be a port in the storm for you. You cannot do it by yourself. I'm not even talking about the whole the fact that you can't, watch your house 24/7 all by yourself without sleep. I'm not even talking about that component of it. I think that there are assets that your people that you can trust have. I think that you need game plans. You need communication plans. You need to know what assets you have. I discovered that there was a ham radio expert in my group that I did not know about. I'm still planning on getting my ham radio license, but that would have been nice to know, should something have happened earlier, and I wouldn't have known it if I hadn't had this group. So it's really important. No man is an island. You need friends, and you need to meet regularly. And sometimes friendships go south. I understand that, but it's not going to be the end of the world. You've got to let go a little bit. And I'm just sick and tired of the whole community. The first thing about being a prepper is you don't talk about being a prepper. You don't talk about some things, but I certainly am not worse off. I'm not in any additional danger, I don't believe. Maybe I've exposed myself to some degree, but I'm not worried about it. I've been very prayerful about what I'm doing, and I'm sure that you can be prayerful about who you talk to and be led by who you would talk to and who you would create a group with. Everybody can benefit from it. The more people around you who are prepared, the better and more secure you are. Hi, Prepper Dog. Nice to see you. Okay, next one. You need to stop looking at the myopic little parts about preparedness and look at the 10,000-foot view, the map. Anybody who goes into a special operations, they look at the map. They want to see the entire scope of the land. We've got too many people focusing on food or ammo or all these little tiny pieces. And I know it's easier to eat an elephant one bite at a time, but you've got to see that it's an elephant. You don't want to just be gnawing on one little piece and not even know that you're up against an elephant. Let's look at the 10,000-foot view of preparedness. In order to do that, you've got to see the 10 principles of preparedness. That's so important. Please go to the blog, put in 10 principles of preparedness, or get my book, Neanderthals in the Kitchen. Read through the 10 principles of preparedness. The blog has more details than I went into in the book, frankly, because the book wasn't about the 10 principles. It was about the kitchen preparedness, food preparedness, and I just didn't want to take everybody to food preparedness and ignore the other principles. So I just barely touched on the other principles. But please go through the 10 principles of preparedness. That's your roadmap. That will prevent you from over-investing in areas that are unimportant or too heavily investing financially in areas at the risk of ignoring other areas of importance. It's so important. Eric says, my family is slowly catching on and they send me things all the time now. They're getting on board. That's wonderful, Eric. I can honestly say I'm happy to hear that because I know that that's got to be such a relief. If you ask them what if questions, I find that really helps. If you say, hey, what would we do if? And don't make them these, gosh awful, way out there kind of things. They can't digest those. Just do what's going on right now. What do you think we would do if we were caught in the path of Milton? What do you think we would do if we had 4 13-foot wave surges on our house right now? Go with things that are realistic to them. What do you think we would do if we were in the Ukraine right now? Those kind of things. Talk to them about things that they could actually relate to. I find that helps. It helps get their wheels going. And even if they don't have an answer for it right when you ask, it gets in their brain and their brains are solving for X. And brains will solve for X until they have it figured out. So it may come when they're in the shower or when they're watching a movie and all of a sudden, ding, 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 that answer will come and they'll go, I hadn't thought of that before. So it does work. It works wonders. Okay, so that 10,000-foot view, please, everyone who watches this, go to the blog, put in the search bar 10, spell out 10 though, don't just do 10 because you'll bring up some other things. Put in 10 principles of preparedness and please go through the 10 principles. All of them are important. Don't just shrug off spiritual preparedness, mental preparedness. They're all vital and they build on each other. Every lay of the land on that map is important. You do not want to be caught unawares. You don't want to be in the funnel of death, so to speak, as they call it in the police academy. You want to be aware where your strengths and weaknesses are. You can't do that unless you have a proper inventory list. And the principles of preparedness are a great roadmap. In fact, one of the people who read the book, he's the author of his own preparedness series. He said that the 10 principles of preparedness were a great roadmap. And I was just thrilled as I could be that he put that in his review on my book. That was just wonderful. Okay, moving on. Next one. You may have heard this before, but I'm gonna reiterate it. Appetite fatigue is a thing. This was not a client, this was a friend who was so excited that they were getting on board with preparedness. And I could feel their excitement. It was contagious. They wanted me to come over to their house and see what they had accomplished that day. Well, my excitement was watered down just a little bit when I saw 400 cans of soup. They were all the same soup. They weren't even different soups. They were 400 of the small Campbell's soup cans of soup. You know what? It's a start. This was a family of 5, though. It wasn't even sufficient. This person had a false sense of security he truly did believe that he had a year's supply of food now. He said, we're only going to have one meal a day, but we're going to have one meal a day. False sense of security hits you like a ton of bricks, and those lessons hurt the worst. I can't say it enough. Appetite fatigue is real. I have what I call a bean cupboard. I have all different kinds of beans. Easily will take care of me for 6 months. But I have another cupboard that is equally as important, which is spices and vegetables like onions and carrots and celery and diced green chilies and canned sausage and canned ground beef and those kind of things to make all of those beans in a million different ways. Because beans and rice, they are great staples, but you will get sick of them. The LDS Church sent down to Ethiopia, this is years ago, they sent down truckloads of beans, and they were shocked to discover 3 years later that some of those truckloads were still there because the Ethiopian people just in that community just could not handle any more beans. They just couldn't. They were finding other ways to eat. Appetite fatigue is real. Plan on it. That is why I have hundreds, not 50, not 80, hundreds of recipe in my cookbook for you. Shelf-stable ingredients. When it calls for cream cheese, use the cream cheese powder. When it calls for sour cream, use the sour cream powder. When it calls for strawberries, use your freeze-dried strawberries. Everything is shelf-stable. Calls for feta cheese, make your own feta cheese. That's covered in Neanderthals in the kitchen. It's easy peasy, completely. Somebody says less than a month before elections, be ready, stay close to Jesus. You want to stay close to Jesus anyway, but yep, stay a little closer. Make sure you know who he is, because he's going to be your best friend when things get extra, extra tough. All right, next. You've heard me preach this. You've heard it from me, if nothing else, but water. You can't ignore it. I know you want to put your head under the covers and not bring it out again, but water is so important. Everyone down in the Southeast can tell you that. They are surrounded by water, and yet they have no water to drink. They are in the worst way. Had someone post on, I believe it was on Facebook, that she had all kinds of water stored up. They're living through the crises, and she went to bed, and the next morning she woke up and her kids had drunk half of what she had stored. Here's the thing. I don't think people realize this. On average, you use 100 gallons of water a day. That's a lot of water. 100 gallons. And in a crisis, everybody says have a minimum of 1 gallon of water a day. That's for your baking, your drinking, your hygiene, your clothing, washing your clothing. You go from 100 gallons to 1 gallon. Bro, talk about a stark reality. That's not going to be easy. But first of all, you got to let everybody in on the plan before you go to bed. That's a big one. All right. But secondly, you need to take that seriously. You need to take that precious 1 gallon and you need to have a plan for it. One that not everybody else has for it too. Okay. Make sure not everybody else has laid claim to that water. You can't just have water stored, although water stored is vital. It's much more vital than people take it. And I'm almost in tears sometimes when I see how lackluster people are about storing water. I know it's not easy. It doesn't matter. It's still important. But you've also got to have a way to purify water. With these people being surrounded by water, if they could just purify it, they could just filter it, they would be much better off. Gravity-fed filters are important. They don't have electricity, so their RO unit, chances are, well, some RO units will work. But there's so many electrical units that people rely on that aren't going to work. You can filter your own water with activated charcoal and sand, and it's cheap. I mentioned that yesterday on yesterday's video. Just look it up on YouTube. Create your own water filter. It's easy. There's several great videos out there on it. But you've got to be able to do that. And you've got to be able to have a source of water. It's imperative. So many people I'm reading have wells, but they don't have a way to get the water out of the well when the electricity stops. They're like, oh, we'll be fine. We're on well water. Okay, we forgot about plan B. That was their plan A. A lot of my recipes, I'm not going to apologize, but a lot of my recipes do require electricity. Okay, those are the recipes you wouldn't use if you were stuck in Helene. But guess what? A lot of my recipes do not require electricity. They require the hand beater or a solar oven or a Dutch oven or a grill. It is a cookbook for preparedness people. It will come out on October 22nd. So it'll still be useful. Somebody says, when we move strategically. Brilliant. That's thinking ahead. That's thinking. That's my next plan. That's what I'm doing next. Got myself 4 acres. Going to be building on it. And I'm going to be building on it to help people. Not just me, myself, and I. Somebody says, I have a river in my backyard and lots of different ways of filtering it. You're set. That's wonderful. I have an underwater spring or underground spring, and you can bet that I will be paying for a pump, a hand pump, so that I can get that water. That's going to be imperative. Yeah. Water is just you can't ignore it, people. I'm sorry. I know you want to. I know it just blows your mind, but you just can't ignore it. I know your small apartment, you're like, where am I going to put it? Water bricks. They're your friend. It may not look nice, but you've got to take it seriously. All right. Last but not least, protect the investment. If you're making an investment in your preparedness, you need to protect it. Now, I'm not just talking about stuff. I'm talking about your mental fortitude. If you are going to take the time to learn about the 8 weeds that you can eat in your neighborhood, don't forget that. Keep learning it. Keep exercising that muscle, that brain muscle. Keep studying. The more you study, the more you will retain. You've got to protect your investment. It's your life. It's your lifestyle. You don't want it to go decrepit and just disappear on you. If you have a firearm, protect the investment by learning how to use the firearm. Protect the investment by making sure you take care of the firearm. If you have food that is in a humid environment, protect the investment by setting up a dehumidifier. Protect the investment by organizing and rotating. Not rotating your food is not an excuse. That's the biggest takeaway you should get from my book, is to rotate through what you've got. Store what you eat what you store, and rotate through it. Nobody should be socking away something and then going, oh, have we had that for 25 years? What do we do with it now? No. Do you really think that God expects you to spend money on powdered milk and sock it away for 25 years? You think he's illogical like that? I don't think so. I don't think so. We're just so full of excuses, and we tend to get that way because we're in this first world nation. Many of us are, but I saw more prepared people in the Philippines, in a third world nation, than I see in my backyard. And it's just a matter of priorities. For them, it was about their life. And we're just so lulled into complacency that we're not making it a part of our life. We don't think that we have to be self-sufficient any longer. But you know what? That's the plan of the adversary, is for us to be lulled into complacency. We're lulled into complacency with our freedoms and with our self-sufficiency. And we just can't do that. We cannot abdicate those freedoms. We can't abdicate our self-sufficiency. While we're on the topic of abdicating, I'm going to say it. I'm going to catch flack for it, but I'm going to say it. This is my opinion. I don't think that you should be abdicating your food preparedness to someone else and letting them choose what meals you have and how it's prepared and what portions it's in, and spending money on it. I think you should prepare what meals you eat, what portions they're in, what ingredients go in it. I don't believe in purchasing these ready-made kits, for lack of a better word, or systems. You know, you can spend $4,500 and get food for a family of such and such. That's abdicating your responsibility, in my opinion. You don't know what's in there. You're not familiar with it. You don't know if your family's going to like it. I know you want to be able to tick a box, but that's the wrong box to tick. Think about that. Think about the ripple effect of that decision. Sorry, ended on a down note. My apology. Okay. Somebody says, no excuses. I lived in a small studio and I had plenty of preps on hand, lots of water. It is possible. This is your life insurance policy. I agree. I lived in an 800 square foot apartment. Granted, that's not a studio apartment, but I filled an entire full-size U-Haul. When I got married and moved out to Utah, my friends were packing it while I was on my honeymoon. And they were like, how in the world did she get so much stuff in this apartment? But I did. And my apartment did not look like I was some kind of hoarder. I found spaces for things. I got creative. I went vertical. I took advantage of every little crack and crevice. I found places for things. That's all there was to it. It was a priority for me. And I was taking responsibility. And I take much more responsibility now than I did back then. So go figure. So here's the 7th thing. Don't think like everyone else. Financial preparedness is something that you need to concern yourself with. Don't just focus on the things. Make sure you focus on the financial preparedness as well. 6 months of operating expenses, at least. You need friends. No man is an island. But look at the 10,000 foot view. Make sure you take a look at those 10 principles of preparedness so that you've got that full map view. This is a special ops. We do not go into special ops without looking at the map, right? Appetite fatigue is real. Prepare for it. Water, can't ignore it. And protect the investment at all costs. I see people pay money to protect their RV in the winter, or their boat in the winter, or their precious car, or whatever. Come on, protect the investment. Your lifestyle of preparedness is an investment that needs to be protected. All right, that's me. I'm done preaching at you. I hope that it made you think a little bit. And I hope to see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.